Hello Year 10. Next week, when we return to school, you'll be doing an end of unit assessment on the American West. Remember, this will be an open book assessment, and this week we are giving you the opportunity to pre-plan each question. So we're going to share the questions with you before you see them next week. So this lesson looks at question 1. You can then have your plans to work from during the assessment, as well as your book and revision guide. So there will be no surprises. What we're assessing is your ability to apply question technique, as well as detail and evidence. We're not testing your ability to remember stuff. So on to the next slide. Okay, so the first question on the American West paper is always the consequence question. And in next week's exam, it will be explain 2 consequences of the Fort Laramie Treaty 1851. And remember, each consequence is marked separately. You get a maximum of 4 marks for each consequence. So the examiner wants you to write a paragraph explaining consequence 1, and then a second paragraph explaining a second consequence. And remember, there's a clear sequence in a consequence question for success. So step 1, you have to state the first consequence you intend to explain, and that needs a clear starter sentence. You then need to explain and evidence the consequence, so lots of detailed evidence and clear explanation. And then finally, you move on to the second consequence and you repeat. So it's state a consequence, explain the consequence with clear evidence and explanation. Now, to help you, we've attached to this Firefly task your PDF revision guide, and you can see here on screen there's a page in that revision guide that focuses completely on the Fort Laramie Treaty. So you need to read it and study it carefully. Perhaps you need to annotate it. You certainly need to understand it. Okay, so what I need you to do now is just in your book, put a heading, question 1, explain 2 consequences of the Fort Laramie Treaty 1851, and then just on to the next slide. Okay, now all that remains is for you to construct a plan that you think you could work with next week to allow you to write up the best possible answer to this question 1, explain the consequences or 2 consequences of the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851. So in your plan, you should have consequence 1, and that should be planned out as a Peel paragraph, not written in full, mind, just planned. So you need to think about a clear opening statement indicating the consequence you intend to explain. You then need to jot down evidence and the ideas behind that consequence, and you need to remember to jot down a reminder to link back to the question focus at the end of that paragraph. And then you need to repeat. You need to study the document and come up with a second significant consequence, something that happened because the Fort Laramie Treaty. And again, you need to devise a clear opening statement indicating the new consequence. You then need to put in some bullet points for the evidence and explanation to show your understanding, and obviously some idea of how you'll link it back together at the end. So this lesson is just an opportunity to revisit the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851 that we've not studied in a while. It's to read up on it using the revision guide or look back in your own notes, in your own exercise book. You'll find that we've covered it way back in September time, October time, and create a plan. And remember, once you've done this plan, you can upload it, I can see it, and more to the point, you can bring it the week beginning the 8th of March when we intend to do our open book assessment. Okay, Year 10, that's it for today. Next lesson we'll be looking at creating a plan for question 2 in next week's assessment.